What's up, everybody? Here we are. We're live. This is it. I wonder how everybody's doing this afternoon. I've been thinking a lot about how difficult sometimes Sundays can be, how challenging people who maybe are like, if you're away from your family or if you're not as close to your family as you used to be, or there's a lot of times there's a lot of family relationship that happens on Sunday. And so a lot of times, in my experience, like if you're not around that normal environment on a Sunday, it can be pretty challenging. It can be pretty difficult. It can be depressing a little sometimes, to be honest. And so I have sort of come to the point where I'm learning how to properly and more appropriately embrace that terrible, difficult feeling. That when it comes on, when the onset of it comes on, I embrace it, I face it. So I want to get to really why I want, like what I wanted to talk about today. And that is the Eskimo and the fisherman, right? This is a very commonly told story. A lot of people tell the story. I've heard it dozens and dozens of different places, and I'm going to put a copy of the different stories in as a comment on this here. Just give me a second here and I'll get it in there. There it goes. So yeah, I'm basically going to put the copy of the Native American stories. So George Bernard Shaw is the most common reference that I have found, and it's a Native American elder once described his own inner struggles in this manner. Inside of me there are two dogs. One of the dogs is mean and evil, and the other dog is good. The mean dog fights the good dog all the time, and when he asked which dog wins, he reflected for a moment and replied, "The one I feed the most." That's also been repeated and turned into a book by John Gordon called The Positive Dog, and he has a whole series on being the positive dog. It's a very commonly referred to parable. It's a thing that a lot of people talk about. It's common. It's something you hear in preaching. It's something you hear in public speaking. It's something you hear, you see in memes. You see it on message boards. You see it everywhere. And it also sort of permeates psychology sometimes. The idea that there is these two sort of natures, right? That's what they say. They are asserting that the individuals that perpetuate this supposed historic parable. See, I don't know if it's historic, and I actually did a lot of digging, and I found out that it's inconsistent. I found out that there's actually an inconsistent trace of where this thing started, where it came from, where it's going, how it got there, who started it, where it really came from, all that stuff. It's hard to really tell. But what is clear, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that a lot of people believe that this thing is true. A lot of people believe it's real. And that's fine, and that's good, and that's okay. But the difficulty there is that no one is willing to consider its efficacy. Everyone reads the story, right? And says, oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that feels right? I mean, that seems to feel right. Seems to make sense. I mean, it seems like I'm always sort of, like fighting or struggling. Hey, Chuck, what's up? It seems like I'm always fighting. It seems like I'm always struggling. And yeah, that makes sense. Sure. Okay, sure. And they swallow it. They sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, totally. The difficulty is that it's not true. Like there's no actual evidence that it's true. I know it's just a parable, but the principle that the parable is based upon is false. It's fictitious. It doesn't make any sense. Because there's not two dogs that are fighting within me. And if there is, I mean, I understand the idea that it's nature, right? But if it really is those two natures fighting inside of me, there's no real way we can tell. So there's no real value. Here goes my dismantling. Here it goes. Ready? There's no real value in labeling an experience inside of our body or mind as good or as bad. There's no value in that. It's actually valueless. So, I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have any guide of what is or isn't good. You should have that. You should have a standard level of like, this is good and this is bad and that is bad and this is good. You should have that, and you should use it, and you should apply it all the time, constantly, incessantly. You should. You shouldn't stop. That's a good thing. What you shouldn't do is believe in a philosophy about your mind or body without any basis in reality, scientific fact, or reason, or logic, or anything, and then perpetuate it, and then live off of that as a springboard into doing other things in your life. That's foolishness. It's absolute foolishness. Because the further we go into that analogy of there's these two dogs, one's good, one's bad, they're biting each other and they're fighting, and who's gonna get fed today? That whole idea, that concept, it's so bad and flawed. It's so foolish. It's real bad, because that means that you're a good judge. Do you trust you to judge what's going on in here as always right or always wrong, or do you make mistakes sometimes? Up here, in your heart, in your mind. Sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes it's a challenge for me to wrap my head around what's going on up here. So sometimes when I'm trying to decipher whether this is good or this is bad, I sometimes stop and wonder, why am I taking so much time to try to label a thing in here or in my world as good or bad? Why? Why is that beneficial? Why is it fruitful? Why does it value me? Why does it bring benefit to me? Well, how does it help me? It does not help me. It does not get me to where I need to be. It hinders me. It stands in my way. It actually becomes a burden. I actually create a problem that wasn't there before by labeling those experiences as good or bad. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a standard of good or bad. You should. You should have a moral compass. You should appeal to it often. And I would submit, this is a completely different subject, but perhaps it's connected. Your moral compass should have a foundation. If you believe in something, believe in it because of, right? If you believe in something, believe in it because this, because that. For instance, I believe beating dogs is always wrong. Why? Because I love dogs, and I've experienced that with a good amount of training, they don't need to be beat. That's just an example, okay? So the idea that there are two things in me may or may not be true. That may or may not be consistent and accurate, okay? But why is that beneficial for me to know? What is that going to help me do? Nothing. It's going to stand in my way. Okay, there's an author named John Gordon, right? He wrote a book. He wrote a book called The Positive Dog. It says we all have two. This is an excerpt description from Amazon.com/positive dog story about positivity. It's real bad, in my opinion. I know you guys were wondering, but I'm going to give you a quick link to this book here. Here you go. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. There it goes. There's the book link. This is an example, okay? And again, I do not know John Gordon. I think maybe I'm sure he's a great guy. It seems like he's a decent author. I mean, I don't know anything about him, nothing about him at all. His book is $11, so, maybe you should buy it. I don't care. So this is a quote from his book that is so aptly prepared and ready to identify, label, and classify what's going on inside of his or your body and mind. And he does it or he's encouraging people to do it with no experience. Hold on. Read that link real quick while I talk to you about this real quick. The idea, the actual idea that you have been living your life. Let's say you're 20 years old or 30. Let's just say 30. You're 30 years old. You've been living your life for 30 years with absolutely no tactics or methods of maintaining or managing your symptoms. You've no awareness of what's going on up here. You're just getting started in it. You come to the idea, the possibility that you can begin to observe your thoughts as they're moving through your mind, and you can sort of pick and choose the ones you want to experience, and you can see them, and you can be less reactive and more responsive, right? It's really crazy, the whole concept of it, right? The whole idea that you can really communicate with what's inside your brain, your mind. You can kind of be in the driver's seat. It's an interesting concept, right? But what is true about that whole process is that you don't ever master it. You never become a master of that process. Even a master at that process probably shouldn't be trusted to label something as good or bad. Why? Because I don't know his scale. I don't know the scale with which he's using to judge good or bad. Why? Because everybody's scale is completely different, and it's going to measure and weigh things in a completely different method. What's right for you may not be what's right for me. What's good for you may not be what's good for me, right? So because that's true, and because we know that that's true, because we live in this world, on this rock, we know what's going on, we understand that, it's unbeneficial and actually hurtful. So it doesn't help you and it actually hurts you to try to use all that up there to say, that's good and that's bad. That's the good dog. No, that's the bad dog. No, that's the good dog. Because what you're doing is you're actually trying to say this is good and that is bad. You're setting yourself up to experience poor experiences. You're setting yourself up to not advance past living in the moment of this terrible, difficult experience. You're setting yourself up to do that when you're so quick and apt to say, that's a bad thing, that's a good thing. Again, I want to be very clear and reiterate this because for those of you just tuning in, have a moral compass, follow it. Have a standard of good and bad in your own mind based upon whatever moral compass you use. Have it, use it. That's not what I'm talking about here. We're talking about something completely different. Again, the link I put up here in the comments, please check it out. It's a book called The Positive Dog. I'm not pooping on John Gordon. I'm using him as an example of a permeating idea, philosophy that there are, first of all, that they can prove that there's two dogs, not prove, but that they're asserting that there's two dogs up here or in here that are fighting back and forth, the good dog and the bad dog, right? And furthermore, from that assertion, they're making the claim that it's beneficial and good to call what happens good dog or bad dog kind of things. Well, you know, today I lost my temper and that was the bad dog. How did what did I do? That's another thing. Here's the biggest problem, you guys. The biggest problem. It puts the onus on you for something that you have no control over. Or, if you have control over it, you have no capability to understand what it is you did that led to those circumstances. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, okay, well, I fed the bad dog, so I got angry and then something bad happened. That's ridiculous. That's stupid. That's dumb. It doesn't make any sense. And it hurts you. Why? Because it's contrary to fact. The fact is something happened. That's the facts. How or why may not be able to be ascertained at this moment. But it happened. We know that it happened. It occurred. Some crappy thing happened. Some apparently crappy thing happened. But when you look at this, the idea of, so this is the sort of, this that I'm about to say would be a contradiction to the idea of the two-dog philosophy, right? Here's the contradiction to that, and here it goes. Be in the moment, know what's happening, observe what's happening, experience it, log it, track it, however you want to do that, whatever steps you need to take, and then at the end, look at the results and say, okay, how are the results working? I mean, am I achieving my goals here? Am I getting where I want to go with this or not? Because if not, okay, then maybe I'll change my methods. Versus saying, oh, something bad happened, must have been the bad dog. You're putting blame off of you while also taking unnecessary blame and putting it back on your shoulders. It's foolish. Here's a quote from this John Gordon book. He says, we all have two dogs inside of us. One dog is positive, happy, optimistic, and hopeful. The other dog is negative, mad, and sad, and I'm adding the the two dogs often fight inside of us, but guess who wins the fight? The one who you feed the most. So begins the story about a negative mutt named Matt. Bleh, and a big dog named Bubba. Ugh, no thank you. No thank you. Because it's really based upon a bad premise, a bad concept, an idea that really doesn't make any sense at all. We're really not trying to fight a bad dog off and let the good dog win. That's dumb. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't add up. Won't work. There's no math there. It doesn't click. It doesn't connect. It doesn't make sense. Instead, what you should be saying is, what steps, what practices am I doing? Just not what am I doing that's good or bad. Stop spending so much time focusing on what you're doing as being good or bad. And just take time to observe it. I would submit that most people that I talk to that have problems or express to have problems with the mindfulness or the awareness, or even myself, it's usually it's discovered and found most clearly in how I observe things, how I label things. Oh, this is a bad thing, or I label this is a good thing. Again, it's very important, extremely important, to have a solid basis for moral compass, whatever that may be, okay? Whatever that may be. Have a basis for morality and ethics. Appeal to that when necessary, right? But when we're talking about the stuff that's going on up here or stuff that's going on in here, it matters a lot less about your moral compass and a lot more about observing it. Just see it. See it. Stop spending so much time labeling it. When you think about jiu-jitsu, I use a method that I adopted from a book called The Zen of Jiu-Jitsu, from white to blue belt, right? This is the method. He says you have your position, then you have your transition, and then you have your submission. If you skip your transition and go right from position to submission, you're going to miss it. You're going to skip it. You're going to lose most of the time. You're going to fail. You're going to slip up. So that's why the steps are position, transition, submission. I mean, there's other methods. I mean, obviously there are masters of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu out there who could tell me all sorts of cool algorithms and plays on words and all sorts of acronyms to help me remember things. But I remember that the most, because it makes the most sense. And you take that and you apply it to your psychological issues or physical issues or physical issues. Tim, are you telling me that you're going to ask yourself another question and then you're going to answer it? Yes, I am. Other me who I'm talking to. No, but for real though, when you think about physical pain, we spend a lot of time classifying things that we experience. We spend way too much time, in my opinion, attempting to put things in a box that makes sense. Trying to get things to fit into the box that makes the most sense for that box, that thing to be in. We spend time cultivating and crafting the containers with which we put our experiences. And a lot of times, we spend more time crafting and cultivating the containers that we put our stuff in than actually experiencing the stuff we're supposed to be experiencing. We spend more time trying to think about if a thing is good or bad than we do actually thinking about the thing itself. Let me give you an example. If I go on a trip, my car breaks down, it sucks. However, I can choose to, and this isn't about like, I'm just going to be positive. No, this sucks. That sucks. That's a sucky experience. It's not, seemingly it's not fun, and it really, experientially, having been there, it's not fun. But it becomes so valuable in the moment to watch what you're experiencing. Watch it. See it. Don't be so afraid of it. Turn around, pause for a moment, and look. Oh, that's anger. Look at that. That's terror. That's anxiety. Man, look at that. Now, is there any value in it? Yes. Is it beneficial? Yes. Is it a scalable model? Absolutely, because you can apply it to everything else. Especially physical pain. If you are experiencing physical pain, if you know somebody who's in intense physical pain, let me tell you, doing jiu-jitsu, you become a homie with pain. If you've experienced physical trauma, you are a homie with pain. And I probably can guarantee you that so many people I know who experience chronic or physical or extreme pain, they're really ready to label that bad boy as bad. Boy, that pain is bad today, isn't it? This isn't about the charismatic Christians that are like, speak it to believe it, brother. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying you should necessarily change your vernacular. If it sucks, it sucks. I mean, that's fine. But I'm more talking about up here, up in the headspace, because that's what this positive dog, two dog, fighting in me garbage crap is all about. That's what it said. That's what it's trying to say. It's trying to say that, there's just these two dogs in you, one good, one bad. Whichever one you give a steak to, it's your fault. It's your job. It's your responsibility. It's you. It's your fault. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. I don't know. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's like happening to you. Maybe you're bipolar. Maybe you have PTSD. Maybe you have anxiety. Maybe you have schizophrenia. Maybe you are taking bad medicine. Maybe you're not taking the right medicine. Maybe who knows? But no way you're ever going to find that stuff out in a real way unless you pause and look. Observe your thoughts and emotions for a moment. Observe your feelings. See them. Know them. Become intimate with them. And when they come without permission, they're going to have a lot less of a power pack behind their 1-2 punch. They're going to want to try to do stuff that's just not going to be as effective or maybe as efficacious as it could have been had I been less prepared. The autonomic nervous system is a thing. It happens. It really triggers a lot of stuff. Things can happen without our permission all the time, and we're left feeling helpless, hopeless. We're left feeling like for some reason that we can't think straight. We're left feeling like I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's going on. I can't function, right? That's how we're left feeling a lot of times when we experience those automatic nervous system kind of responses, that fight or flight, the dump of dopamine, the cold and hot rushes over our body, the motor skill feeling, the jittery, the I can't think straight, I can't breathe, I feel like I'm going to puke or poop or pee my pants all at the same time. And when you pause for just a quick second, and observe those things, the hands, they stop doing this and they slow down and they calm down. And it's not about some religious experience. It's not about some special magic drug. It's quite simply about pausing for just a moment to observe your thoughts and emotions long enough to see them. Don't take time to label them. That's foolish. Don't spend that time doing that. I promise you, when it's time to know what those things that you're seeing are, it'll be clear. You're like, well, what do you mean, Tim? Well, let me explain. I'm glad you asked. Person who's on the other side of this camera lens. By the way, if you're listening, thanks. This sort of podcasting helps me a lot. It helps me get the stuff that's up here out. And from what I hear, I've had, dozens of people, 20 or 30 people, quite a few people message me over the last 3 or 4 or 5 months and say, your stuff's helping. You're really helping me. It's, I was having these times, or I shared this with a buddy who was having a hard time and it helped him. I don't know. I hope it helps. It's a way for me to sort of vomit all over the internet and get my stuff out. But when you observe those emotions that are coming across your plate, when you see them, anger, panic, depression, sleeplessness, anxiety, hopelessness, a feeling of worthlessness and wanting to die, those kinds of feelings, don't run from them. I don't mean like, yeah, let's go do those things, okay? But I mean, let's look at them. Let's just look at them. It's like that, what's that? Would you just look at it? I mean, would you look at it? He goes over and he slaps the hood. Would you just look at it for a second? Because if you look at it for just a second, it's like, what, that's it? It's like, that's it? Yeah, that's it. Your brain's terrified of losing control. Your brain, your psyche is terrified of losing all sorts of things, especially when you've trained it to respond poorly, to run from it. That feels bad. I need to not feel that way anymore. I need to eat this pill, smoke this blunt, eat this food, drink this drinks, go to this place, do this thing. And I'm telling you, jiu-jitsu, hiking, marijuana, pills, alcohol, drugs, women, gambling, it's all really, really effective. Some of them have excellent side effects, other ones don't. They're all effective at managing what you're feeling. The problem is you're not managing it all a lot of times when you're just dumping a lot of those things on them. You're not actually managing anything. And it's then a residual cycle of self-hatred and debasement when you follow the principles of the two dogs. Because then now you're the one who's at blame for what you were trying to run from to begin with. which then creates another cycle of garbage. That's what happens. So stop spending time saying, that's bad, this is good, that's bad. Instead say, that's a dog, that's fear, that's anger, that's yelling, I feel terrible. Now hold on, that last one there. See, like, that can be tricky. It can be very easy to say I feel terrible, especially when you feel terrible. It's like, well, no, I know I feel it. I know what terrible is and I feel it. Okay, well then you feel terrible. And feel that though. Like, don't try to run from that feeling. I'm not saying don't... See, it's so tricky, I think. Because I'm not saying don't take time to do things that help make you not feel the way that you can clearly feel is bad. Don't skip that stuff. Don't run from that stuff. But don't use that stuff as a crutch, man. Don't use that stuff as a means of muting and dulling those things. Because if you guys ever watch that movie, Adam Sandler flick, where he's got the click thing where you can like pause, and do you remember that? Where you can pause and replay and pause, and it starts to learn his preferences, just like with DVR. It starts to learn your preferences, just like with Netflix, right? And he's clicking and he's clicking and he's clicking, and he's like, that's a fight, I want to click that, and he skips it, right? Then the next one, it's like another fight, and it automatically skips it, and he's like, heck yeah, we skipped another fight, right? And all of a sudden it's like, oh no, this isn't a fight though. And it skips it, and it skips it, and like he's missing all these things, right? And all of a sudden everything is just sort of taking over, and it's happening without his permission, right? And all of a sudden he's just overwhelmed, and it's the end of the movie, and of course it's Adam Sandler, so it's funny, and there's, you know, penis and fart jokes, but the point is less about Adam Sandler and his film, but more so about the idea that when we program our brains, just like those ridiculous remote controls, to skip the hard, bad, difficult, gross stuff, when we train our brains, it's going to start doing it without our permission. In fact, I'll submit that most of us have experienced some form or other of trauma. We've experienced it. We have. And because we've experienced that trauma, because we know we've gone through it, we also know that we have methods of coping. Because I don't live in all of my trauma all the day long. I mute it sometimes. That's not my permission. That's not my prerogative. That's my brain doing what it does automatically. It just does that. It mutes those things so that I can live. But our job here, our goal here with this whole whatever we're doing, right? This whole job, this whole gig, is to unmute those parts of our brains that have been paused and muted for so long. And one of the ways in which we can unmute those parts of our brain that we sort of maybe don't even know where our brain is muting and shutting up without our permission is by engaging in these activities that I'm talking about. So the next time you feel ultra crappy, spend time, lots of time if you can, sitting quietly with your arms and legs crossed, just sitting and listening to nothing for a moment. Observing your thoughts. There's really dozens and dozens and hundreds and probably thousands of guided meditations out there that you can download on Spotify, YouTube, Audible, or you can go somewhere and do it with a group. You could probably pay somebody to sit in a forest and guidedly meditate you. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could do it. But the longer you run from what you're feeling, the longer it's going to haunt you. The longer it's going to have you in its grips. The longer it's going to, like when it comes up right now, depending upon what stage and what element and all that stuff, it may be really crappy when it comes up. It may be overwhelming. It may take all of you. Like that's why people a lot of times they talk about that. They talk about how like this is hard and this is difficult and this sucks. And if I keep feeling these kinds of feelings, I'm going to be overwhelmed. Right? That's what they say. They say, I got buddies. I myself, these symptoms are going to overwhelm me. That's the feeling and the words coming out. Right? But if we just took a moment right then and there to pause and observe those overwhelming feelings and sit down and relax for just a moment and just watch those feelings as they move by. Or as they sit right on top of your chest. But watch them and breathe. Stop taking time to beat yourself up. It's worthless. You're not feeling bad or having bad experiences because you fed some bad dog. There is no dog, friends. There are no dogs. And although I do already have said multiple times and will reiterate, having a moral compass is important. Having an ethics standard is valuable. It's valuable not just for our society, but for your soul. I believe it's very good. And from where you derive it matters, but it matters more so that you have something that you derive morality from. Ethics, values, those kinds of things. But outside of that, where those ethics and values are quiet and silent in your psyche, spend less time meditating on what you've done wrong and spend more time meditating and focusing on what you're feeling right now, at this moment. As you breathe in and out, as you think in and out, as your brain moves, as your thoughts develop and grow, that's what you should be watching and monitoring. That's what you should be tracking. Not taking time, frivolous time, to attempt to put boxes up on your shelves of your walls of your mind and labeling those boxes. And then as your experiences come across, you put these experiences in these boxes. It's very, 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 very unhelpful and hurtful, because later down the road, you're going to have to address those boxes, friends. You think you won't, but you will. You can't hire somebody to dig into those boxes for you. You have to go into them. You will. You will. That's a fact. And let me tell you something. And this is just Tim's opinion, every single mental breakdown is a result of all those boxes being so overwhelmed they can't even fit anymore. And they tumble over on top of the person. They can't think straight. Literally, they're gone for a while. It's terrifying to think that that could happen. But the fact that that could happen is only a result of your negligence. God dang it, that's harsh to say. I hate to say that way. But it's true. My negligence is what has led me to where I am now. I will say this. It's not negligence with knowing. It's ignorant negligence. Like I didn't know. Like if you don't know how to drive a stick shift and you grind the gears, it's going to suck. If you don't know, like you got to get the right timing of the belt and you got to get them to go, and it's got to be just right. If you don't get it right, it's going to be rough. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be harsh. It's going to be tough. Did that person grind those gears because they're bad people? No. Was it bad that they ground the gears? No. They were learning how to drive a stick shift, and if they didn't understand what grinding the gears does, they won't have the appropriate respect and appreciation for shifting the gears on time. Furthermore, they won't understand how to drive quickly if they can't understand what will happen if they put the car into second gear at, say, 60 miles an hour. If they don't understand what could happen when they do that, they're not going to be good drivers. They're going to operate that vehicle in an unsafe manner. That's a fact. Stop spending time labeling experiences as good or bad, friends. Stop spending time putting them in boxes that say good and boxes that say bad. I'm unpacking a lot of that stuff right now in therapy, or trying to at least, and holy Moses. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying right now. Don't believe in the myth of the two dogs in your system. Don't believe that. Reject that fallacy. It's just a saying. George Bernard Shaw is quoted as saying it a few times, and there's a couple other people. Like I said, I mentioned a book by this guy named John Gordon called The Positive Dog. He believes in positivity for everyone. I don't. Because I believe positivity is okay and cool and fun, and joy is great, and ice cream, yeah. But the thing is that's not life. Life is the amalgamation of all of those experiences coming together to make a beautifully woven rug that sometimes sucks and sometimes is ice cream. That's life, my friends. And this striving and just uncontrolled desire, just this passionate, like zombies towards fresh bodies. The droves of human beings, particularly Americans, go to mute all of their feelings as often as they can. They need their feelings muted because if they were to feel them, that means they would have to deal with them. So they spend time building their shelves and their mind's walls. And then when they experience things, they go, that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad, that's good. And then they've got walls filled with things that are good and bad. And they never deal with those problems. They never address them until they have a breakdown or a freak out, or kill themselves, or take their own life, or take somebody else's life. I am asserting that it is absolutely necessary to observe your emotions, thoughts, and experiences in a subjective way in order to healthily deal with them, in order to deal with them in a healthy way is what I mean, in order to deal with them in a way that makes sense. Again, to reiterate, and I'm gonna go back to this again, and then I'm gonna skip over to some tips that I got from some people. Having a moral compass and a standard for ethics and values is absolutely essential for human life, for community. It's existed since the dawn of man. It's a part of our lives. It helps. To quote a very peculiar reference, Jim Jeffries, we're not animals and we live in a society. That's what he said. He's an atheist comedian, and it's funny that I can agree with him on that we're not animals and we live in a society. And so having guidelines for ethics and morals are good. There's a reason why rape and murder are wrong. There's a reason for that, and it's good, okay? Boop, we're going to set that over here. It's over here now. It's right. It's in the box right there, and we're going to come back right here, where we're going to talk about, there's 2 dogs in you. Don't give any of them steak, or give the right one steak, or don't give that one the grains and feed the other one the bad food. Wait, you got to feed one bad and the other, you feed one a bad. See, that's just dumb. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. I'm not going to spend time making sure I feed the right dogs. I'm going to spend more time thinking, well, there's anger, well, there's unhappiness, there's depression, there's joy, and there's peace, and there's calm. I'm seeing these things happening. I'm experiencing them. And I'm allowing myself to experience them fully and completely. Now, that all has been said to say, it's really tough. That whole observing thing, it's really freaking hard. It sounds really easy to say that out loud. You just need to do this and that. It sounds really easy. But it's really freaking tough. It's really hard because your mind doesn't want to obey. It's like a disobedient little 4-year-old that wants to get into everything and do whatever it wants without anything, without anything. And it's terrible a lot of times. And so I'm going to add this. I'm going to put this little article in here. I use this app called Headspace. It's a great app. I love it. It helps me. I find it to be very plain and basic and simple. And anything with a British guy, I'm going to probably listen to. The article basically talks about meditation when you have PTSD. It's a helpful thing. Now, before you completely dismiss this, that you don't have post-traumatic stress disorder, I want to encourage you to think in your life, and I'm not saying you are diagnosed with PTSD, but I want you to think in your life if you've experienced things that are in any capacity traumatic or difficult or challenging or hard, or things that you can look to and say, man, I don't remember that period of time in my life. That's really weird that I don't remember it. Or you can look to a time in your life and you can say, that was really a difficult time. There may be a difficulty to call that traumatic, but the fact is, it may have been for you. It may not have been being shot at or blown up or having your physical rights violated in some capacity, sexually or emotionally or whatever. You may not have been in that way, right? You may not have experienced in that light, but you have experienced trauma for you. Every human being has in some way or another. And so it's not about like, I got to go find the trauma. That's not the game. That's not the dig. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying more than that. Observing what you're experiencing can help unlock these past traumatic experiences. Observing what you're feeling can help you dig into some of these deeper seated maybe reasons why you feel the way you feel. Possibly. That could be a fact. It could be that you're experiencing what you're experiencing because of something that you're not really even sure is related to how you're feeling right now. It's like, well, I had a buddy of mine tell me, he's not in the military. He's like, man, every time I get in a car, I don't know why, man. I just feel crazy. Maybe it's I don't know. I can't tell if it's well, turns out I talked to my dad, and I was in a car accident when I was 2, and I didn't remember it, and it was traumatic, and it was hardcore, and blah, blah. Right? But he would have never had that notion had he not been doing mindful meditation, right? Just really get past your fear of the word meditation and remove from it the religious connotations, if there is any in your mind, and just really apply it to focus. Focus, focus. So let's just call it mindful focus. That's really all it is. It's you're pausing for just long enough to let your brain feel the fear it runs from every single day. That's a really safe way to put it. Because your mind runs from things that are unpleasant. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of things that are unpleasant aren't really unpleasant. A lot of things that are challenging and hard aren't really hard. Your brain's lying. Your brain's not a trustworthy source for information and data. A lot of times, your brain and my brain really just wants to be comfortable and left the heck alone. It doesn't want to be bothered with these traumatic experiences, these events, especially if they're events that it's taken a long time to bury and dig down. If it's taken a long time to put away, right? Your mind, I mean. Your mind has taken time to get to a place where it's not going to live in that trauma every single moment. And then you come along here with your mindfulness and try to dig it out of the box. Your mind's going to resist. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. It's going to be scary. It's going to be terrifying. You're going to feel crappy. I have a word for you though, guys. Feeling crappy is actually not analogous to reality. Like you could feel crappy and not feel crappy. And your experiences could be exactly the same. So then it would beg to question the feeling crappy or not feeling crappy. Maybe that's just like something you put out there, like that you put on the experience versus what it actually is. Getting assaulted at the moment would be terrible. But what if, and just what if here, right? What if I got assaulted and then the guy that assaulted me came to court and I'm able to talk with him and chat with him. Turns out he's a veteran, right? And he's just down on his luck and he was drunk and he wasn't doing great and he's sober now and I'm able to chat with him and tell him about my story and maybe help him a little bit and you know, when he gets out of jail, go and see him and you know, maybe he's doing better. You know, those are the kinds of experiences that can never happen if you absolutely 100% operate in shoot, target, shoot, target, shoot, target, shoot with no pause time, no stop, breathe, aim, think, communicate, talk, take stock of your surroundings. Target, shoot. Target, shoot. Because you need all the data before you pull that trigger. You need to understand. And your brain often is not really all that willing to give you that time. Your brain really doesn't want to goof around with any kind of like possible emergency threats. If it's a threat, it's a problem and it's in the way. And we don't want to allow those threats because they're going to cause bad feelings. And you've trained your brain just like with Adam Sandler in the movie Click, you know, he trained the brain, or just like with your DVR, you train it, your phone learns your practices. You can train your brain in the same way as a machine. And you've trained your brain that bad experiences are bad. We want to mute those bad experiences. We don't want to experience those bad experiences. We want those bad experiences to stay bad, stay there, stay away from me. I don't want to feel those things. I don't want to think about those things right now. Those things are bad. Stay away from me with those bad things. Bad, 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 bad. And when you look at like these two different viewpoints of like spending time labeling something as good or labeling something as bad, that's the one viewpoint. And then the other viewpoint says, I'm just going to observe these things as they are and let them be what they are. And that can sound really deep and philosophical, but I don't mean for it to. Because it's really not. It's really actually just as simple as what I just said quite literally. Literally. It's pause, think, look, observe, feel, move on. You don't need to classify it as that was bad or good. You could spend time saying that was wonderful. You can spend time saying that was interesting. You can spend time saying that was this, but that's after the experience. When you rush to labelizing it or categorizing it, you often miss the experiences itself. You often sort of just scoot right over what's really happening right then and right there. Because of oftentimes your fear. Your brain and you and your psyche are all like on a team, and you're like, let's not feel bad. So then what does that necessitate? Well, it necessitates something being classified as both good or bad, or either good or bad, excuse me. Which leads us back to the very problem. The very problem of American human beings, these upright bipedal humans who constantly cause problems. That's the biggest problem with them, is that they don't want to feel. They don't want to feel. The good that they do feel isn't often good, and the bad that they feel is also not that bad. Their brain lies to them that the bad that they're feeling is the worst, and then their body lies to them and goes along with the ruse that the brain has concocted that, yeah, this really is bad, you guys. Yeah, this is probably bad. Yeah, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, and then, boom, it's bad. And now you've appropriately and effectively trained your brain that this is bad, and we're going to avoid that because we don't like it. Ooh, boo, that's bad. We don't want that. Right? And so we spend time in our lives, in our day. That's bad, that's good. That's bad, that's good. Ooh, that's bad, yeah, that's good. Not just with our thoughts anymore. Now we're spending time saying, that car ride was good. That food was bad. Okay, the food might have tasted bad, but just remember, like, is it beneficial to say it's good or bad? Okay, with a meal, it might be beneficial to say that was bad, because I don't ever want to eat that again, and I don't have to, right? But I don't know, maybe it's not bad, I just don't like it. I just don't enjoy it, I don't prefer it, right? So I can maybe approach my psychological issues or symptoms or whatever it is you are dealing with, by the way. This isn't just about Tim Locklear. This is about y'all and me and us together, raising the consciousness of mankind, one inane Facebook video at a time. Yeah, exactly. Joshua Havens on a live podcast said here just now, he goes, just be thankful for the food and the car ride. Exactly. Be thankful. I'm experiencing this now. I'm experiencing that right now. I'm experiencing this right now. I'm having these experiences right now. And there may be a time or a moment when saying this was good or this was bad is beneficial. I want to be clear. You know? But when you think about, okay, I've lost the life of someone, or something seemingly difficult has happened, or I've lost a job, or my financial situation has changed. These things come with burdens and difficulties all in and of themselves. They don't need the assistance necessarily of you saying that was good or you saying that was bad. You spending the time to classify something is actually only going to hurt you in the long run, because you're spending time and mental energy on trying to classify something that doesn't need classified, and the very classification process itself is actually deleterious to healing. It actually works against being better, being healthy, being well, being cognizant, being in the moment, those sorts of things. And so I think that it's absolutely beyond measure essential to not view what's going on inside of your mind or body as which dog you're feeding. Remove from you and from your situation the responsibility of labeling and titling things. Your moral compass and your ethics will not be compromised with this method at all. It won't. You can remain whatever viewpoint, religious or not, that you have. What is, and will be impacted greatly, hopefully, is your perspective. The method with which you choose to address the problems that you're facing. That's what will change. Because now the problems that you saw before as problems are no longer problems any longer. They're no longer issues as they were before, right? They're no longer these giant, huge monsters that won't let you live, sleep, eat, and breathe. Now they are experiences. They are episodes in a movie. chapters in a book. They are happening. And the longer I fight them, the more undesirable they will be. And these methods have applications in so many different things that I could spend hours talking about it. I referenced earlier, and I'll restate again for those of you that have tuned in since then. But when you look at jiu-jitsu, you have position, transition, submission. I get into my position, I get where I need to be, then I transition from there to my submission. I don't rush from the mount to an armbar. I don't rush. Because if I rush, I mess up. I know very little about jiu-jitsu, but what I do know is that if you rush, you will fail every single time. I see a couple of my jiu-jitsu homies on here, and they're watching, they're seeing, they could attest to that. That it's not about that. It's not about being quick. It's about being efficient. I stubbed my toe. Ah, that's bad. Ah! You could say that. Sure. Or you could simply not allow your brain to take over quite so much anymore. Stub your toe, experience the pain. Call it pain. Ow, that's pain. That's pain. Call it that. But perhaps, again, this is just a perhaps here. This is just a perhaps. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm 100% on point. I could be completely garbage and malarkey and wrong, and we'll work it out on the mounts and you can choke me out later. I could be wrong here. But what I can tell you anecdotally and also with quite a bit of research and data to back up what I'm saying, that mindfulness as a practice will help you stop spending so much time calling things good or bad in your brain and spending more time learning to live in those moments. Because the very process of classification actually removes you from the moment now. So what you're saying is, this is bad. Well, why is it beneficial for me to know that it's bad right now in this moment? It's not. It is beneficial for me to know that it's bad later. So even the process and mental dialogue that it takes to label it requires me to go in the future, to go ahead. Why? Because the now is the problem. The now is the problem. That's what your brain is saying. This is bad now. This is hard now. This is terrible now. That's what they're trying to say. They're trying to say, right now is so hard I can't think straight. They're saying, right now this sucks. That's what your brain is telling you. So listen to it. Listen to it and acknowledge that it sucks to it. I know that doesn't make any sense. It's almost like you're like removing yourself, like these little... But that's, yeah, I mean, think about that for a minute. Okay, fine, this sucks. Let's do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? That's one of my favorites to do. What's the worst thing that can happen? Let's go there. You're going to cry. You're going to feel bad. You might throw up. Your hands are going to shake. It's going to be tough. It's going to be so friggin' challenging. You're not going to be able to think straight. But you're safe. You're safe. A lot of times, too, it's not as bad as your brain wants to make it think it is. A lot of times those panic attacks and a lot of times those overwhelming moments are really just your brain trying to send you a message saying, this is a danger, this is a danger, this is a danger. So look around. Are you in danger? I mean, there's no guns to my head, no knives, I'm good, no danger, right? I'm good? Okay, good. All right, brain, is this a danger? Let's experience that for a little bit. So you sit down and you observe your feelings on that issue. You observe your feelings of panic or fear. It's such a weird idea, seemingly, but it's pretty basic. It's pretty simple. Not that hard, actually, to do. Just buckle up, because the results are that you're going to experience things that maybe you haven't experienced before, or maybe you're going to feel things that you haven't felt before, or maybe you're going to observe things in a way that you've never observed them before, and that's going to be scary and difficult, and it could be challenging, and it could be actually really overwhelming. And that's why I don't want anybody to ever do this unless they're comfortable with it. But whatever you do, choose to do, no matter if it is in relationship to or not, mindfulness, whatever you do, please don't allow your circumstances to mitigate or to control or to dictate your feelings. That's the goal. Spending time not letting my feelings be controlled by my mind is a better practice with my time than spending time labeling what is happening in my mind. Labeling it only wastes my time. It's busy work. It reminds me a lot of the movie Office Space, where he's like, I deal with the people, because they were asking him, the Bobs were like, so what is it exactly that you do here, what is it you do here? And they said, I deal with the customers, I'm a people person, I deal with the and that's sort of the funny thing that our brain does to us. It's like, I'm handling all the risk here, I'm on the front lines, and you're like, no, you're making things worse than they are. It's not really that bad. And if it is that bad, let's experience it, and you prove your brain wrong. You sit down for a second, and you breathe, maybe take some calming medicine, whatever that may be, and you feel, and you experience, and you see, and you begin to, you can begin to tell. You can begin to sort of observe those emotions and say, oh, wow, they're pretty wily. They actually don't make a lot of sense at all. I don't want to feel those anymore. I'm not gonna experience them. And then when they come around again later, it's like, oh, wow, okay, that was that thing I experienced earlier. That was that thing. I remember that. I remember feeling this, and I remember what to do here, so I'm going to do that. That's sort of the goal. That becomes the focus. And with that, I believe I've been online here for a little bit of time. I don't know. Let's see here. How long we've been cooking. I don't know. It won't show me. Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to probably try to go to the gym a little bit today. I had some plans that didn't quite come through, and so I think I'm going to hit that up. I really appreciate all of you guys following along and watching. It really means a lot. I don't mean to say that passively at all. I couldn't do a lot of the stuff I've done here in Denver and across the country without the help of some of these people that are watching this very podcast. If you're listening to this later, it's because it's uploaded, which you can find it at timothylocklear.com, and then just click on podcast and it'll take you right there. While you're there, though, please click on my service dog, Boris. He's amazing. And check out boristheservicedog.com, because that's a cool place that we're trying to create resources for veterans to get access and data about service animals, things related to service animals, and those sorts of things. Check out also, while you're there at timothylocklear.com, check out Veterans for Natural Rights. VeteransForNaturalRights.org is an organization that was started by my friend Matt Kale in Divide, Colorado. And the idea with Veterans for Natural Rights is that we're actually trying to get veterans safe and legitimate access to resources, data, legislation, and support, and those things that they don't have. And so some of those things look like supplements, hikes. We go on a lot of hikes. We do a lot of physical activity. The primary focus of that whole process is seeing that veterans are finding their way out. But, pause. You're like, I'm not a veteran. Is that what he's talking about again? Because I'm not going to listen. Pause. Because if you're a human, like an upright bipedal kind of human, the one that walks like with the feet and stuff, you probably have a brain. And if you have a brain, you like to use it. And if you use it, it's probably got some trauma. If you're older than me, if you're as old as me, or if you're at any age, you've experienced something that's difficult, it's traumatic. And therefore, your brain has begun to be programmed. Just like the DVR remote for that movie I was talking about earlier, or just like your Netflix, or just like your cell phone, it begins to remember things. It's a machine. You've trained your brain to respond to certain things in certain ways, and the goal becomes to readjust that process. The readjusting process looks very simply less like, I'm going to say a special grouping of words when I feel extra emotional and everything's going to be better. Nope. It's the day-to-day grind. It's the right now I feel this way. My brain wants to tell me that feeling this way sucks. But I'm going to observe it for a while and see how it feels and go from there. I'm not going to spend or waste my energy on saying this is good or bad. I'm actually going to waste and spend my energy, not waste, but I'm actually going to spend my energy on remaining calm and focused on what's happening and what I'm experiencing. I'm going to go through and give everybody a wave on the live podcast. I appreciate you so much. You guys are beautiful people. Let's see, what else was I going to say? Joshua Havens added a whole bunch of stuff while we were on the live podcast, which I super duper appreciate. Yesterday was pretty awesome. I got to go on a hike, I took off my shoes, and my buddy Andrew and I went and experienced some pretty fun, I don't know, we saw this really cool red algae stuff. I'd never seen it before, and I came home and Googled it, and I still haven't been able to find out much about it, but I definitely want to find out more. I saw my sister Faith was listening. Faith, I love you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. All these other people, let's see here. Ryan Walton, holding it down on the East Coast. I appreciate that, Ryan. Jackie Noah, what's up? Appreciate the love. Robert Ryan added some thoughts. I appreciate that. I promise that my communication methods, Robert, are only a result of much time and experience trying to convince myself that everything I'm saying is wrong. That's a lot of times. Spencer was listening. I appreciate that, Spencer. That's some good love. My brother CJ, love you, Bubba. I'd love to see you soon, man. Give me a call. Charles Lisby in Omaha. Appreciate that. Let's see who else. Last but not least, Elizabeth Anderson, Ty Gay. You guys are great. Tanya, appreciate you. Nancy, all the way from Kansas. I appreciate that. Jason, thanks for listening. Homie, what's up? Jiu-Jitsu rolls. Let's see, who else? I'm getting anybody else here. I don't want to miss anybody. Nick was listening from, I think he's in like Lithuania or something, right? Aren't you there, Nick? I don't know. Maybe he's not listening right now, regardless. Let's see. I think that's about it, guys. Again, timothylocklear.com is going to be the website. It's going to have all this stuff on there and more. Kevin was listening for just a quick second with the Denver Psilocybin Society. He's pretty cool. You guys should check that out. Last but not least,